I went back and I reread and then finally like actually totally finished the Jim Starlin Adam Warlock collection omnibus that I own. I first got it several years ago and I read most of it, and then at a certain point I think it was just I do this thing when I really love something where I just don't finish it. And it's not like ever a conscious choice. It's just at one point I put it down and I just never pick it up again. And I don't know why. I don't know why I do it. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want it to end. I've never had a problem with that. I've never had a problem with, no, I really don't want it to be over. Because, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Because if you just put it down because you're scared of it ending, dude, it's over. Like, it ended. You're not seeing it anymore. Like, there is effectively no difference between closing a book and never finishing it versus finishing it and then never reading it again. You will never finish the book. But with an ending, at least you might be satisfied. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I've never felt that way. I don't know why I do this. I do it with games. I do it with shows. I do it with everything. No idea why I'm like this. I absolutely adored Jim Starlin's Adam Warlock run, and it affected me a lot. But I just never finished it for some reason. So I finally went back and finished like the last 3 issues that are in there. And damn. So like this was spurred because the other day, Kat asked me what my favorite Marvel character was, and I told her Adam Warlock, and she went, really? Because she's only familiar with him from Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3, which is, yeah. He's got some funny moments in that. He's definitely, a presence in the film, but if your only exposure to the character is that movie, I could definitely see why you would raise an eyebrow at me saying that. The version of the character in Gothica 3 is, if anything, similar to his characterization early on. Adam Warlock has a weird history. Let me look up, the various writers to work. Yes, okay, so Adam Warlock was originally created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby because Jack Kirby wanted to make fun of Steve Ditko for being a fan of Ayn Rand. So Adam Warlock was a joke about objectivism and how objectivism was stupid. The whole idea was it was a character who was created. Some scientists create a human being who is according to objectivist qualities, and then the joke is that he just kills them all. So, what happened is that Stan Lee didn't like all the philosophizing, so they like changed it so that they're more generic, just evil scientists and stuff. And then Adam, who was not even called Adam Warlock, he was just him. It's him. Dracula flow quote. I can't think. There were multiple that came to mind. My brain got flooded and I couldn't say anything. He just kind of, he like fought Thor. He's like a weird, kind of reminds me of Frankenstein's monster. Like, he has a fully formed brain and senses, but he doesn't know anything about the world, and he's just very, I don't know. They were kind of, he's just a guy who goes around. That was his characterization. He fights Thor. He's one of the many various sci-fi villains that Thor bizarrely has. Then the creator Roy Thomas kind of took over for the character and wrote this. He wrote a series for Adam Warlock, which was basically him doing Jesus Christ Superstar and turning Adam into a Jesus allegory. with the High Evolutionary sending him to this Earth that he'd created called Counter-Earth that's inhabited by furry humanoids, like animal people, that was supposed to be without any strife or conflict or like social disparity. It was supposed to be an idyllic world. But then like an evil furry introduced like fur affinity or something, I don't know, to the world, and introduced furry discourse onto Counter-Earth. And then Adam's got to go. He's got to go to Counter-Earth and be their savior and their champion. And it's just him doing Jesus Christ Superstar, because Roy Thomas was raised Christian. I think he was Lutheran. Then, so that storyline like came to like a weird sort of inconclusive end. He fights the president. Who's a furry. And Jim Starlin took over for the character and was like, I do not fucking care about that. I'm going to wrap this up in like 2 pages of exposition. Jim Starlin had a very different approach. He is a very interesting character. I've seen Starlin described as like a Hunter S. Thompson type. He was a Vietnam veteran helicopter pilot, and he had kind of an interesting life. He was a writer and an illustrator, so he pulled double duty on a lot of Warlock books. And just a lot of stuff that he did, and a lot of comics that he worked on in general. Frequently, he is credited as like all of the other manual labor. And Jim Starlin had a very different approach to the character. He had a much more hostile relationship with organized religion compared to Roy Thomas. And it's really hard to describe what his Warlock run is about, because there's a lot going on and a lot of meta stuff happening. He essentially turns Adam Warlock into a character who, the premise, I would say, of Starlin's Warlock, which I kind of consider the definitive version of the character because I'm biased, is Jesus Christ completes his mission and returns to heaven. Now what? Not now what on earth. Let's keep the camera on Jesus. Where does he go? What does he do? Now, perhaps it's just like, he goes back and assimilates with, God and all that, and the whatever is eternal and exists outside of time and all that. But Adam Warlock is a real, literal person. He is a being in the physical world. So what does he do? He has all of this power. He's a superpowered being. He can fly. He's incredibly strong. He's incredibly durable. He's practically indestructible. He doesn't have to eat. He doesn't have to sleep. He is effectively immortal. In the movie, funny enough, they add him shooting lasers, which is not something that Starlin has him do, at least not early on. He's just a Superman. He's a Superman with no weaknesses and no flaws and no vulnerabilities, and complete free will over what he does. So what does he do? He has no idea. Adam Warlock's journey is Adam Warlock is in a constant struggle to find meaning and purpose in his life. He is kind of tossed about various adventures where just weird things are happening to him. It gets very psychological. At one point, he fights a monster of his id. Starlin was really into psychology and philosophy and stuff. So he fights like his id that represents all of his dark thoughts. He joins up with Thanos. Starlin is also the creator of Thanos, and I believe most of the Infinity Gem stuff. So Starlin makes Thanos. He introduces him as kind of a neutral character who needs Adam Warlock's help to stop a character. I don't even know how far I should get into spoilers, but because I think you should go read it. But in brief, because I think this is a very interesting premise. Essentially, oh no, wait. Thanos doesn't need his help. Their goals align. But Warlock initially, his goal is there is a church called what is the church called? It's been a minute. What is the Universal Church of Truth? Yeah. There's this thing called the Universal Church of Truth, which is led by this guy called the Magus. And the Magus enforces a dictatorial, oppressive way of life upon all of the people that the church essentially conquers, who are forcefully indoctrinated into its ranks. Starlin was not the biggest fan of organized religion. Warlock goes to confront the church and ends up discovering its leader, the Magus, is actually him. It is in the future he turns into the Magus and gets blue and an afro for some reason. He's like the disco pope. So he is oh yeah, also Warlock possesses the soul gem. He has the soul gem, it's embedded in his head. And apparently the soul gem has eventually drives him insane. It corrupts him and turns him into this despotic religious tyrant who enslaves other people to like feed itself, essentially. And Thanos has aligned himself against the Magus, and like the Magus is there because he like traveled back in time, and it gets really weird. They start to get into how does Adam defeat himself, and it is by killing himself before he turns into the Magus, but in the future, in a different future point, and Thanos and the Magus are fighting, and the Magus, Thanos hates the Magus because Thanos is in love with death, and to Thanos, death is the opposite of life, but they are not cyclical. Death does not give birth to life in Thanos's interpretation. Life is a constant, essentially life is chaos. Life is the illusion of order, which is then shattered and then reforms itself over and over and over again. And life is spurred by purpose, which is provided by things like religion. Thanos worships death. He is enamored with it because death to him represents perfection, stability, an unchanging eternal state. And he is in love. His love of Lady Death, the Marvel personification of death, like the Grim Reaper, is basically just a representation of it. It's just a stand-in for his sort of philosophical need to reach this state of perfection. So he, of course, hates the Magus because the Magus is a conquering religious leader. He affects life. He spurs life. He gives people purpose. It doesn't have to be positive. He just causes change and the continuous chaotic cycle. And Thanos represents non-purpose and inertia. Or I guess like a stillness of inertia that never enters motion. And they're like clashed in this battle. And I'm reading this stuff, and at the same time, Adam is going on like a spiritual dimensional trip. And he's seeing this character, the In-Betweener, who represents... The In-Betweener is coming to like destroy him or something. It's coming to do something. I forget. And the in-betweener represents duality. He's like the personification of dualism, which is both life and death, order and chaos, truth and illusion, all of these things, all weakness and power. And Adam has to subvert this like dualism in time to kill him, commit cosmic suicide. And mind you, the artwork during all of this is incredibly bizarre. It's really out there. Starlin was unsurprisingly really into LSD. He was into weed and LSD. Those are his two drugs, at least that we know of. A lot of the writers at Marvel were at the time, and artists, and you can see it in his work. The story goes a lot of places. That's like the first major arc, and it goes other places as well. It really feels like over the course of the run, Starlin's processing some crazy shit. He's powering through the drugs and his own. At certain points, it just feels like you're reading his thoughts when he's spiraling. And he's using Adam Warlock as an avatar to fight his own personal demons. And the moments of lucidity and peace that he comes to that are then ripped away by the world. There's stuff about, definitely it feels like survivor's guilt. Adam has a lot of survivor's guilt, and he feels it almost on a existential, in this way where it like a universal level, where he knows that he's immortal, so he's gonna outlive everyone else. So he almost has this preemptive guilt that all of his allies and friends that he's made over his journeys, and his companions and people he's made connections with are going to die before him, and he's gonna be around. It feels like Starlin is grappling with a lot of shit. And I love it. I love it. It resonates really strongly with me. Adam's feelings of he is constant, like the most characteristic, the most iconic Adam Warlock imagery to me is him in standing or sitting on an asteroid in space, contemplating existence. That's his whole shtick to me, at least at the start of the story. By the end, there is a certain level of so this is really funny. Starlin just loved quitting Marvel. He quit over and over again and then came back. He did it several times. And he gets to almost the end of a big storyline, and then he quits again on a total cliffhanger. And then like 2 years later, they get him back to wrap it up in some like Avengers and Marvel team up issues. Basically, take some maybe like 3 or 4 issues worth of story, because those were extended books, and wrap up the Adam Warlock stuff. It's very funny because whenever he writes the big crossover stories, he always, because he did the Infinity Gauntlet and the whole Infinity Saga, he always just brings in his Captain Marvel, the original Marvel Captain Marvel, and Adam Warlock, because they're just like his little pet characters, and he makes them the most important thing in the world, which I find very funny. He really just wants to write these characters, but he has to use the Avengers. I don't think he writes them poorly. It's just clear what he really wants to write. But it's fun. The team up has Spider-Man and The Thing going up against Thanos, which is great. there's a moment where Spider-Man's like, hang on, let's hear him out, Ben. And then Thanos is like, did you think I was just gonna, oh, okay, you think I was just gonna monologue? You were gonna exploit my like need to do a villain monologue? Fuck you. And then he just punches the thing through a wall. So, and then by the time it wraps up, it feels like in the 2 years between him writing the initial run and wrapping it up in those additional issues, it kind of feels like he's at a different place, maybe a slightly better place. And the conclusion is oddly hopeful. The conclusion that Adam comes to is oddly hopeful. And I like it. It's sort of a little bow on his character before he would inevitably get kind of brought back out of the light. Not a lot of other writers would use Adam Warlock, or I think Marvel. Again, those were sort of Starlin's characters. I believe one of his major gripes with Marvel was over the use of Thanos, because they wanted to use Thanos as like a general villain, an Avengers villain kind of thing. And Thanos was a very personal character to Starlin. He came up with him, and Starlin is clearly obsessed, at least for a certain period of time. He is obsessed with talking about death, exploring death, and the different perspectives that people have of it is a reoccurring theme in his work. Thanos was inspired by a psychology class that he took in college to, I think, impress a girl, but he learned about this concept of Thanatos, which is, it comes from the Greek word. It is a Greek word that is the embodiment of death, kind of like the Greek Grim Reaper, that kind of a figure. And in psychology, Thanatos is an obsession with death. And he found that really fascinating. So I imagine his time in the military also got him to think about that. And it might have immersed him in that kind of a mindset as well. So Thanos was a not so clever, not so subtle shortening of Thanatos in creating a character based off of that, where that is their defining characteristic. So it's a theme that's clearly close to his heart, that he finds fascinating, and he writes Thanos in a very particular way. I love Starlin's dialogue. I love it. He gets so, I think a worse writer would take the same conversations or dialogue and they would make it sound kind of annoying, just really wordy and preachy and ham-fisted, with characters just debating about philosophy or talking about philosophical concepts. But the way that Starlin writes it, I find so compelling. The characters, I am so sold on the characters that these are people with intense beliefs, with real epic moral struggles going on, and they're well spoken enough to articulate themselves on these ideas. Like, his dialogue just, sometimes there's a lot of, I find a lot of American comics can sometimes be very wordy. It's one of the interesting things about, I find that like a lot of manga is a little bit light on dialogue and often focuses a lot more on action, and not like fight scenes, but just, things happening or expressions and stuff like that. Whereas I find it's more common stylistically for like American comics to be very dialogue heavy. Obviously it changes depending on the writer and the script writer, or the artist and the script writer. I mean. But that's just kind of the general trend, and I never mind. I am never upset when Starlin does it, because I just find his. Can I grab? Let me go over here and grab it, and just see if I can find a page of that's crazy. Oh my god, the visuals are insane. The visuals in this book are so crazy. Really cool. God, the art is so cool looking. I love Starlin stuff. Yeah, I want to find this one particular thing. Hang on. Right, so Adam is just on this like big barren wasteland of a planet. Deadly silence, the silence of a dead world. Once this planet teemed with life before it left its stellar orbit and became a wanderer. A runaway planet, a drifting dead world. And Adam says, magnificent yet empty, much the same as my own life. I've had everything a person could wish for. Power, freedom, followers, excitement, even truth. Everything except purpose. Back when I was acting as Earth's and Counter-Earth's protector, I had a reason for existing, but those days are past. In fact, recently the only thing I've had to protect anyone from is myself. Perhaps I should find some cause to champion, except I've become too cynical of late to believe in anything. It's difficult to stand up for apathy. So what do I do now? And then from off screen someone says, perhaps you should try looking past yourself. Who? Adam says. There's this like weird alien goblin guy. Merely an ancient traveler, or perhaps a humble thinker, maybe even a crazed hermit. The choice is yours. Just as it's your decision whether you at last understand that what you seek stands before you, or continue to shout blindly into the wind. Then speak, Ancient One, Adam says. What is the purpose I exist to fulfill? Life is its own purpose. For life, like a vibration in the air, is a constantly expanding force, reaching out, growing, until a second vibration comes upon it. They meet and affect each other. There is then change. Yet still they continue to extend themselves, stretching out to the stars, where they'll find new contact and eternal change. Is that not purpose enough for existing, to be part of the all? And Adam replies, no, I want more. That's 2 pages. That's 2 pages. That's amazing. I'm like, fuck, I wish this went on forever. I absolutely adore Starlin's Adam Warlock run. It's just chock full of stuff like that. There's a couple weird issues. I think, like, okay, Adam has this sidekick buddy named Pip the Troll, who is this little troll man, and he is intentionally supposed to be Adam's complete opposite. Adam is very brooding and existential, and his thoughts are always elsewhere, and he feels kind of lonely deep inside. Pip is a bit of a hedonist. He's always smoking or drinking, and he just wants to have a good time. He's more of a comic relief character. He doesn't really do anything. He just kind of runs around. In every action scene, he just runs around. This is also where, I don't know if she was introduced here. She might have been introduced here. This is really early Gamora stuff, who you might know from the movies. She's cool. She's just kind of an assassin. She's just kind of a sexy assassin lady in this crazy, like, full fishnet bodysuit. Oh my god, speaking of alien stuff, Starlin just loves drawing crazy aliens. I love how much detail and how many unique, odd designs there are. It's so... everything is... It's just a visual feast. There's a couple stories with Pip that that are like kind of Pip-centered, that are sort of like backup issues. I think they called them inventory issues. I'm not as into those. They aren't quite as interesting. Pip goes on some weird side adventures, but it's not very much of the book. It's like maybe 2 or 3 issues. But yeah, a really, I find emotionally resonant story with a lot of very interesting character work and concepts. Great, beautiful artwork. And I don't know. I just think it's a classic, and it's underrepresented at this point just because it's very disconnected from any other Marvel thing. You kind of have to be into Adam Warlock and Jim Starlin specifically, and his Warlock was never adapted into the MCU until Gattaca 3. So I mean, he's like integral to the whole Infinity Stone saga. Like all three slash yeah, all like three parts of that: Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, and Infinity Crusade. And Warlock is a key part of those storylines in the comics, but because he was not never adapted by the movies at that point, he has like no presence there. So I have no idea what they would do with him in the MCU now. I'm also like not super sure because at the end of Guardians 3, he's not alone, which is the problem. He has like a purpose and friends and stuff. And that's not Adam Warlock. He's a loner who sits on an asteroid. So if they do anything with him in the future, I can't imagine it'll be that close to the Starlin run, which is, I guess, in a way, a shame, but I don't need everything in the movies to just adapt the comic books. It's not like gonna break my heart, but it's just like, okay, well, this is a different version of the character. Yeah, Adam Warlock rules. It's great. You should go read it. I have described like 2% of the crazy stuff that goes on in his run. So that was from the 70s. Some of that shit's crazy now. Reading it in the modern day, I can't imagine being an 11-year-old in 1977 and picking up Jim Starlin working through his like war trauma and existential crises through like LSD and weed, and somehow that's like put onto the page in the form of a superhero drama. It would blow my mind.